Welcome back. Imagine what it feels like to reach the pinnacle of your national sport. Rich Pilon grew up in a tiny town in Saskatchewan, and he was born a Métis, a mixed race of Indigenous people. He spent 15 years as a defenseman in the National Hockey League. He won the Bob Nystrom Award in 1997 as the best player who exemplifies leadership, hustle, and dedication. He's also immortalized alongside hockey icon Mario Lemieux in La Magnifique, a massive bronze statue in Pittsburgh. However, Rich and thousands of others just like him don't have the right from Canada to govern their own communities. Now, the issues Métis Nation face have led to the rampant drug and alcohol abuse. And in Rich's case, he's even attempted suicide. But now Rich has a new lease on life as part of an incredible team assembled to rectify this wrong. He's here to tell us what story it was like growing up as a Métis and also what he's trying to do to erase the stigma. Let's bring in NHL defenseman Rich Pilon. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, John.
I appreciate you coming on. Now, you've grappled with things like feeling like an outcast your entire life. How were you able to put that aside and make it all the way to the National Hockey League?
Well, I think for sure one of the things is that the dream of a young kid in Canada is to play in the NHL, and I think that was the biggest thing, is having something to hang on to. And as growing up in a small town in Saskatchewan, it's cold there, and there's a lot of lakes. We grew up on the lake and playing the game, and for me, that was my dream, was to play in the NHL, and that's all I focused at a very young age.
Yeah, I'm sure it's so tough to talk about, but I mean, you've overcome a lot of personal struggles in your life as well. But how were you able to survive and give back?
Well, I think as a Métis, now knowing got my identity, we all, I think, in some point of our lives are looking for an identity. What are we doing here on this planet? And when I left the small town of Saskatchewan as a hockey player, I don't really believe I knew who I was at that time, because I'm part French, I'm part Indian, part Scottish, and you get to the NHL, you get to the fame part of it, and the hard part of getting there is one thing, staying there is another thing.
Right.
And as you go through as I learned as I played in the NHL, when you look back in your own communities, there's a lot that they don't have and that we don't have, or I didn't have. So our goal now, a lot of times for us, myself and Brian, and with the the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, is to give back and try and the people that, because I didn't have any support within my family. I had emotional support from my parents, but financially we struggled, and I see that a lot of times here in Canada right now, where I'm from, my backyard. So our goal is to try and bring those struggles and help some of those young people move along.
A lot of these issues impact Natives as well in America. Can you tell us a little something about the atrocities from Native genocide and what residential schools and reconciliation means for people out there?
Yeah, the reconciliation is almost a bit of a weasel word, because we use the word a lot, but really what are you going to do about it? Yeah. And that's the one thing that I've learned from President Glenn McCollum, is that to do something about reconciliation means you got to bring everybody together. And that's the goal with us with the Louis Riel Cup, Inspire 365. We're really close with the partnership of the NHL to being solidified, and then we can make that announcement. But at the end of it all, reconciliation in the generations that people have gone through, young people, you have grandparents that are raising their grandkids because they struggled. They had their own kids taken out of their home.
Yeah.
So that generational trauma that's happened, and how I look at it or I talk about it, is that you can't give what you've never gotten. So if you've never been given love, how do you give it? Because you don't know how. And that's really what we're trying to do with the mental wellness, Inspire 365. Not only bring awareness and help some people, but also in the process, hopefully fulfilling dreams for some of these young people.
Absolutely. And you've teamed up here with Hall of Famer Bryan Trottier, Glenn McCollum, and who you'd mentioned there, and the government. Now, the goal is to use hockey and to try to make a difference. I mean, that's your background, hockey. And now you're giving back to the game. What do we need to know here about Inspire 365?
Well, the goal for Inspire 365, with the partnership of Métis Nation Saskatchewan, with, hopefully with the NHL here, we get this solidified, is to raise dollars and to go back into these northern communities and not be a one-time gig. Create a relationship. What I've noticed with my program of Hockey and Horses, as I've gone into these First Nation communities, the Métis communities, a lot of people show up, they do their thing, and they leave, and you never see them again. I've created relationships that's almost been adopted by some communities.
Right.
So we want to create a program with Inspire 365 that's not only going to grow the game of the NHL, but we're using floorball. We're using floorball. You don't need anything but shoes and a stick, and we supply that. So we want to grow the game, and girls can play. There's nothing, right? Street hockey is a little different. You go into a regular stick, and we're hoping that as this happens, we can grow the game and fulfill some dreams that some of these young people will pick up and play hockey.
Yeah.
And new Canadians, East Indians, everything, right?
Yeah.
Everyone. We want to be inclusive to whoever wants to play the game, and we want to do the best we can, not only to give back on Brian and my behalf, because this is an opportunity.
And you've struggled with addiction, you said, in your life. Just real quickly, what does it mean to help others through their mental health, their drug and alcohol treatments? How rewarding is that, especially in some of these communities where it's a problem?
Well, the thing with when you come back to a community and they now call you by your name, and you're not the Rich Pilon, the hockey player, but you're actually a person, and you see that there's nothing when I see young people get on the ice or get on with the horses around me, and you see them smiling. Right. The horses are really they're a way to just let them, for that moment in their life, they can smile a little bit. And it's really, because when you go to really see where they're from, they don't have a lot to smile about.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing to put a smile on these kids' faces, and these, even the adults. So.
Well, we keep up the great work you're doing. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and and helping all of these young kids out there.
Thank you.
All right, that's Rich Pilon, former NHLer. Thank you again for coming on.